Your life's not like anyone else's, and chances are you found yourself on adventures you never planned to take. It's all part of this crazy journey we call life. Learning how to embrace the unexpected while working to live your best life is not easy, but you've come to the right place. Because in my world, if it's highly unlikely, it's practically guaranteed to happen. I'm Lavina Perry, and this is the Highly Unlikely Podcast. Welcome back to the Highly Unlikely Podcast. I am so glad that you chose to join me today. I love to get to know people. I want to hear their stories and find out what makes them tick. And I love to just seek out deep and meaningful conversations. I thrive on it. I grow from it. And honestly, I learn so much more about myself through listening to other people's stories. But I am a disaster at small talk. Sitting in a room full of strangers that I'm expected to engage with is not my preference. I would rather just stick with my one friend or my one group of friends and then let other people come and talk to me. But because of my job, that's not really an option. I have to go talk to people all the time. And it's not that I don't like talking to people, because it's just that you have to wade through all of the small talk to get to the good stuff. And I'm just terrible at it. So, I just feel awkward and I never know what to say. And I'm always afraid of saying the wrong thing and having people go from wondering if I'm a weirdo to having them proved right. And I always think of that movie, Sense and Sensibility, when the mom tells the little girl with the curly hair to keep her remarks to the weather if she can't think of something appropriate to say. So I talk about the weather a lot. And starting a conversation with something like, "So, tell me your story and what made you who you are today," is a really terrible way to get people to open up to you. So I have made a mastery over my lifetime of having entire conversations where I never say anything about myself. I just let other people talk. And it's incredibly illuminating, but it's not an easy place to get to with a stranger if you can't get past the small talk. So my friend, when I started a job in business development where she knew I was going to have to talk to strangers all the time and network with people, and she knows that talking to strangers is not my favorite thing to do. So she recommended the book, How to Talk to Anyone by Leo Lowndes, or Leo Lowndes. I never know how to say that name correctly. But I learned a lot about myself from that book, but I also learned a lot of really helpful things. But the first thing that I learned was that I am not nearly as bad at small talk as I originally thought that I was. Yes, it's not comfortable for me, but I was way more of a natural than I ever would have imagined. So apparently it is not unusual for people like me to struggle with small talk. And that means that I'm not nearly as weird as I thought I was, which is great news, because that means I'm in good company and there's a lot of other people in that same room of strangers feeling the exact same way that I feel. All just trying to overcome our insecurities and make new friends. And I've also learned that I was naturally doing a lot of things right, like letting people talk about themselves. But there's a lot of small things that I can improve on. And I've learned a lot of new strategies to get better at working a room full of strangers. So now when I go into a networking event, I lean on those strategies. And I have really been impressed with the results. I don't feel as awkward and not so out of place. And since I know that there's other people struggling, I remind myself that I am among friends. We just haven't met yet. And I have worked on my body language and like how to make an entrance in the room that changes the way that people interact with you, how to attract the people that you want to talk to, helping to make other people feel comfortable with you. Um, Plus, now I can get past the small talk and get people to talk openly with me without them ever knowing what happened, which is exactly the way I want it. And I don't know if I'm ever going to feel comfortable or really enjoy talking with strangers, but I learned something really important over this past year from continually being forced to face my greatest weakness, and that is this. A weakness only holds you back if you acknowledge and accept the weakness as an unchangeable part of your identity, like the size of your feet. In other words, you get to choose what you want to work on and change about yourself. So if you have a weakness, it is okay to acknowledge that weakness and accept that it's difficult for you, but it's what you do afterwards that really matters. Do you just accept it and shape your entire life around your weakness like a donut with a hole in the middle? Or do you seek to improve the weakness by doing the work and learning new strategies and continually putting yourself in situations where you have to face your weakness so that you have a chance to practice? I had to face another of my weaknesses just this week. I hate confrontation. Not because I can't deal with a difficult situation, but because historically, I have not dealt with them kindly. But I did something different this time. I have done a lot of work over the last several years and been put in crazy situations where I've constantly been forced to try and to deal with things diplomatically and work with people who maybe weren't that friendly to work with or not easy to work with. And so I've had a lot of chances to work on taking emotions out of the equation of confrontation. I consciously thought about the best way to approach it. I visualized how I wanted the conversation to go in my mind, and I practiced some of the key things that I wanted to say to make sure that they were addressed in the conversation, and I remained calm. And then I had the conversation, and it did not go the way that I wanted it to go or lead to the outcome that I wanted, but I said the things that I needed to say in the way that I wanted to say them. And I came away with zero regrets and without questioning the way that I had handled the conversation. It was a real-time demonstration of the growth that I have experienced over the last several years. And despite not having the outcome that I wanted, it really was a big success for me. And this is the result of me not accepting myself as a finished product. I am a work in progress. I continually evolve and improve, and I work really hard every day to be better than I was the day before. So here is my challenge to you. Pick one weakness that you feel stands in the way of you becoming the very best version of yourself. And then decide one thing that you can do this week to address that weakness. Maybe you can look for a book that discusses it, or you can find resources online that offer strategies that you can use. Or if you already have strategies, maybe you can look for a situation where you can put those strategies into practice. Or you can even consider seeking outside help from a professional. For instance, if your goal is to become a motivational speaker that stands in front of large audiences, but you have no experience doing public speaking, or you're terrified every time you get in front of a microphone, this hiring a speaking tutor, someone who specializes in helping people learn how to speak in front of a large audience, would be really beneficial. You are not stuck with the weaknesses that you currently struggle with. You have the ability to choose who you will be. We live in an amazing time in history where literally everything is figure outable. And that is not a made up term. That is a new term for sure. But what it means is that it doesn't matter what you want to know. There are resources available to find out information about it or how to do it. You can figure out anything that you want to learn in the world that we live in today. So if there's something that you're struggling with, you have the ability to go online or seek help from a professional or talk to a friend. You can even invest in a digital course to learn something or join a Facebook group. You can oftentimes find groups within your community that they're just people who are struggling with or trying to learn the same thing that you're wanting to learn. It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to do the work, to put yourself out there, to figure it out, and overcome the obstacle that you face. Because there is no one standing in your way but you. So give yourself the gift of doing the necessary work to overcome your weaknesses, and never let anything or anyone stand in the way of you reaching your potential and becoming the very best version of yourself. Working to overcome your weakness will lead to exponential growth. You're going to get closer to the life that you want. You're going to build confidence in your abilities, and it's going to help you to love your life. And that's all I have for you today. Until next time, take care of yourself, be kind, and live your best life. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Highly Unlikely Podcast, you can find more by following me on Facebook at A Highly Unlikely Life, or find me on the web at ahighlyunlikelylife.com. And don't forget to subscribe.